Hello and welcome to episode 399 of the Stacey West Podcast. I am not in disguise for those watching at home. This is Gary. I just have stupid hair at the moment. And I am joined on today's podcast by Chris. How are you, sir?
Good, mate. Yeah, good. Mum's birthday today. So
Nice.
We've been out for dinner. Went to the White Horse. I think I mentioned that place before on this podcast, and it was superb once again. So highly recommend that. So it's been a really nice day. Kind of got back about 5-ish. Spent the last hour and a half doing some prep for this, and here we are. How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll avoid the obvious. So it's been a relatively slow day today. I'm training for Equinox with Chris Ray. So we're running like a 10K cumulative relay race where we try to do as many 10Ks as we can in 24 hours. So we did a run yesterday before the game. That was around Brant Road and the High Street and along like an edge that runs between Bracebridge Heath and the High Street. But I've never been down the biking way, which was spot on. And then I did 10K this morning as well, which seems like a long while ago now, around Rugby. And I ran with a couple of people who you obviously know. You know Andy, who works in the co-op, ran with us, and I ran with him and another girl called Emma Spratt, who's tattooed all over her legs. Nice, easy pace. And then they peeled off, and I had to try and catch Jess and Mark Preston, who had shot ahead. So I felt this morning when I got home, a little bit.
It was a competitive one for you.
No, it wasn't, because they just ran at a good pace, but because I'd done 10K yesterday, and it was an hour and 5 yesterday, which is like 10, 15 minutes off my best 10K time, but it was a lot of hills. So that was kind of the practice for Equinox. And Chris Ray, I'm quite pleased because he's now messaged me tonight saying he aches all over and he only did 5K today. And I think that's good. I'll take that. So yeah, day off tomorrow and then back on the running again Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I played 90 minutes of football in goal, which wasn't running at all, on Tuesday night, and it was only yesterday that I started to feel all right again. So I think you're in decent nick, mate.
Thank you. Really interested, just quickly, Flossy Tops from a very cool North Norfolk coast. Do tell me where, because North Norfolk is one of my favourite areas of the country. So I am genuinely interested to know where. Everybody else is saying hello, so we'll come to you when we're in the break. But the small talk, we will park it for now, and we have to, because as you will notice, it's Chris on the podcast today, and we've got 5 goals, a red card, 2 penalty shouts, and they're just the facts. He's taken an hour and a half to prep. I'm just naturally good at this, so I've sat down, done no prep whatsoever, and I'm just going to wing it. But let's start with yesterday's game against Plymouth Argyle, which I'm actually incredibly thankful for, because sometimes it takes a while to get the excitement and the tension building in a season. Sometimes the first few games are like treading water. I go back to the 22-23 season when we signed Jack Diamond and Matty Virtue, and it was slow and stodgy. 17th of August, and I don't care about your Premier Leagues. You can stick them up your Jacksons. Yesterday, football was well and truly back at Sincilbank.
100%. Yeah. Obviously for different reasons, but I kind of felt that in the first game. And I said to Joe, who I sit with, must be midway through the second half. And I was like, I haven't been able to watch this game kind of analytically at all. Because I kind of, once the season gets going, I tend to just obviously get involved with the game. But I like to think I'm quite good at spotting things when the game's going on. And I feel I watch it kind of from a third person perspective, if that makes sense. But I couldn't. I was just so engrossed in it, like emotionally, and like my heart rate. I got heart rate warnings on my phone, on my watch again. So it was just, yeah. It was a kind of a relentless game, really. There was almost felt like there was something going to happen. Now, as the game went on, more and more did happen. But even before that, it just felt like there was always a big talking point or a kind of a big incident just moments away. So yeah, I kind of got swept away with it really a little bit. So I got that against Reading as well. But yeah, there's no denying that we've certainly not started the season slowly, have we?
We have not. Now we're going to come on to all the talking points. I think we'll probably pick up on team selection as we go along. There were very, very few surprises. Jack Moylan, it looks like he's going to be ruled out for quite a long while. So Freddie Draper dropped in, and you put the thumbs down for Moylan being injured. Thumbs up for Draper before the game. Chris Ray gets his second mention 5 minutes in, but he said in the fan zone, this could be his Makama moment, the switch for Makama from centre forward to out wide. Fred was still playing up top. We're very much 4-4-2 out of possession. So, it's slightly different, but I can kind of see where he was coming from. Like you, within probably 5 minutes, I think it was either just before or just after our goal, I turned to Dale, who I was sitting with, and said, this won't finish 11v11. It may not even finish 10 versus 10, because it was played at a really good pace. I think the first, even up to the goal, like Plymouth looked like a decent side. And it's not what we said about Reading last week or the week before last. Decent side, play the ball about nicely. You can see that they're not going to be in the bottom four at the end of the season, but probably just missing something. One thing they weren't missing, the boy who was in Germany last season.
Magdeburg, Amachi. Yeah, I've made a few notes on him. He was brilliant yesterday. Absolutely brilliant.
And Watts as well. Is it Caleb Watts in the midfield? Little arsehole, really liked him or disliked him. But let's go straight to the goal. Now, I am claiming, and I don't know whether he will or not, a James Collins assist for this, because it's a loose ball, it's headed up. It really came out of nowhere. I thought first 5 minutes they were on top. I thought we were in for a long afternoon. And then it's, does Rico have it on his weak foot or Tom Bayliss on his weak foot? Fancy Tom all the time. Great finish. And I think a good time to score as well. Because again, I don't know, I'm going on a little bit now. I think the game here was on another precipice. Lose, and we've got the injuries, we haven't got the players. It was the same as the Reading game from 2 weeks before. And it just settled the crowd, I think, straight away.
Yeah, certainly did. I thought it was a good moment in the game as well, because Plymouth started quite brightly, and that really sets us, because I know we'll talk about it in a moment, but we were really good for the next sort of half an hour from that point, like really, really good. But yeah, you're right. I wouldn't say it came out of nowhere, because there's been no secret that Plymouth have been pretty shaky defensively in the early part of this season. And similar to the Reading game, really, is when you know that the opposition are going to play a certain way, when you know that there are question marks over their defensive solidity, and you also know that your strengths, in terms of our strengths, are aggression, first contact, second contacts, particularly on, it's not long punts. And I think Michael was keen to say out, like, this is still playing out. It's just playing out in a slightly different way. It is targeted and it is planned. But ultimately, big diag from George Wickens. You don't expect to score a goal from it, despite the fact that we had good players forward, overloads out wide. But it was I would call that a 50p head, as was often known in Sunday League football. Not the most convincing defensive header, but you're right. Collins, whether he gets a flick or not, I don't think he did, but he completely takes the centre-back out of the game to allow Hackett and Bayliss to attack the ball freely. It would have been a real shame if they got in each other's way at that point, because it was a really big opportunity. Of course, they didn't. Hackett pulled away. Bayliss, great finish. Even better finish, actually, watching it on the replay than I appreciated in the moment. But yeah, great start to the game for us from that point.
Yeah, I'm having I'm having Collins as getting the nod on, definitely, no doubt whatsoever. Now, Tom Cleverley had obviously been very vocal about the fact that we were going to be long ball, which I don't think it didn't turn out like that. The stats agree. We played 24 accurate long balls, or 24 long balls, 39% accuracy. They played 34% accuracy. So absolutely not having us as a long ball side. But like you say, after that, I think we were excellent. And I think it was the sort of performance you want to see when you go a goal up. We were still pressing. We were still pressuring them. I thought they looked incredibly shaky at times. I thought we worried them at the back. Their distribution looked poor, and the ball went back to the keeper. He looked shaky, although he did obviously make the save from Collins, which I think then gave him the confidence to go on and have a pretty decent game. But he needed that save from Collins. I just thought we did everything really well. We worked hard to a man. McGrandles stood out for me. I thought he was excellent once again, playing the kind of the Ethan Arahan role, let's say. I thought the centre halves were good. Probably Riley Towler got his early booking, and I think that left us looking a little bit susceptible. But then you noted a tactical shift that we made in order to protect him.
Yeah, it was a slight one, really. It was. I agree with everything you said there. I thought we were absolutely superb from the point that we scored. Certainly until kind of the half an hour, 35-minute mark. I thought Plymouth got into the game a little bit more from there without being really threatening. They seemed to have a little bit more control at that point. But we were just brilliant with and without the ball. But when Towler got booked, I thought that would be a challenge, because, and that probably really highlighted our lack of numbers, because the only defensive player we had on the bench was Charlie Parks, who was yet to make a senior appearance. Sorry, yeah, Charlie Carlisle, my apologies. Who's yet to make a senior appearance, and also is a centre-back. So it would be a bit of a shift to bring Towler off and bring him on, and because Towler's on a booking. But it did really highlight the lack of depth, because if you had a backup left back on the bench, you're just going to go swap for swap, because Towler was unable to really do anything for the rest of the game, because as soon as he would put one more mistimed challenge in, one more overly aggressive tackle, one more professional foul chasing back, which you'd normally happily take a yellow for, he can't afford to. So he was really on a bit of a knife edge. And I think Hackett helped him out quite nicely, but I also noticed our press, we just kind of blocked off when they had the ball in their deepest area, that we tried our best, at least, to block off the pass down our left and focus Plymouth to attack down the other side. But on the few occasions that they did get down our right, Amachi looked brilliant. I think it was a combination of him being a very, very, very good footballer, and also the fact that Towler couldn't really risk attempting to tackle, which meant that whenever they got the ball on that side of the pitch, I felt threatened by Plymouth. But to be honest, that's the only, in the first half particularly, I only felt threatened in the 4 or 5 occasions when Amachi got the ball on that right-hand side. He looked really threatening, but there wasn't a lot of cohesion, I think, in Plymouth's team. Other than that, I do feel on Plymouth, actually, that what you said earlier, they'll be fine this year. They'll be most likely, like, I'm not saying they're going to go up, but a bit like Charlton last season, started slowly, a few new faces, a little bit of lack of cohesion and gelling, but will probably gel quite nicely as the season progresses and turn into a unit. Because once they got into our half and the final third, they looked kind of threatening at times. But getting there, particularly in the first half, from our goal until half time, we were brilliant at just stopping them starting their attack, and they looked really shaky in their own half and their own third. So great to see. That's what we're good at, ultimately.
Yeah. Now, a couple of other things from the first half that I'll pick up on. The first one was when James Collins got man of the match. I kind of thought, well, he's got that because he scored 2 goals, not because he's been the best player. But actually, 2 efforts, both on target in the first half, both saved by the goalkeeper. You can't really ask a lot more from strikers. And we're sitting here looking ahead at the next week and a half or so, 2 weeks going, we need reinforcements, but we're not sitting here thinking we need a striker who's going to score the goals. I don't think we have any fear about who's going to score a bulk of our goals. And we're certainly creating. Hackett, again, very, very lively. He also had a shot on target, 4 shots on target in the first half. Both teams had 7 shots, but ours weren't long punts. However, one thing that I did notice early on was the niggly fouls, the pushing, the pulling. They came like they were coming to Lincoln of 1996-97. They came like they were prepared for a battle. Bradley Ibrahim, I think, and I'm recalling this off the top of my head, was booked something like 15 times, I think, on loan last season. Was he on loan at Crawley last season?
Crawley, yeah.
From the Netherlands? Oh, from Germany, sorry. And I remember looking at him profile-wise, I thought he'd be really good for us. But he committed the stupidest of fouls to give away a free kick. Like the goalkeeper has popped the ball up in the air and he's just, I think, poleaxed James Collins, but he's just run into him off the ball. Referee spots it. Free kick was a waste. Tom Bailey said he let Rico have it because he had taken the effort. Tom, next time, be a little bit more greedy. But did you get that sense that even though there was only a couple of bookings in the first half, there was some passages of play where the tackles were flying in and you going, ooh, and there was one, I think, I can't remember who it was, one of our players, it was a studs up challenge. It might have been McGrandles where he's won the ball, but you think fair play for the referee for letting that go.
Yeah, I agree with you that Plymouth came prepared for a battle. I think Cleverly's comments maybe kind of preempted that a little bit. And I'm going to disagree with you a little bit in terms of our style of play, because I thought we were quite long ball. It was long passes. It was targeted. It was playing specifically to target Plymouth's weaknesses, but it was long. It was long passes a lot of the time, and I have nothing against that. By the way, it's not direct for direct's sake. It's direct targeting the opposition's weaknesses. I felt, and I said this at half time, and I don't feel like this is too rose tinted. I felt they were here for a battle. But that's what we're good at. I think that's what I've been most pleased with from us this season. We've been brilliant at all the ugly, horrible stuff. Organisation, pressing intensity, winning the first ball, winning the second ball, being strong in the challenge, being strong in the second challenge. I felt Plymouth were a bit intimidated by our aggression in that regard in the first half. They were willing to get stuck in, but they came out second best a lot of the times, particularly in the middle of the park. And I loved it. And like, I think it's very similar to Reading, really, in that if you were to kind of compare each individual player 11v11, for the majority of those players, you'd say technical ability, Plymouth have probably got better players than we have. But we were so much better than them in everything else. And I love the statement that, hard work always beats talent if talent doesn't work hard. And they absolutely had the talent, but I think we absolutely outfought, outran, outbattled them. And we earned the right to get those shots on target. We earned the right to stop them playing out because we were super organised, super aggressive. Now, maybe that's one of the reasons why Plymouth found their way back into the game later on, which I'm sure we'll talk about, is that maybe we lost a little bit of cohesion with that. But and particularly up to half time, I felt that the aggression element of it and the ugly part of football, that you like, the stuff that you have to do better than the opposition to kind of earn the right to play. I thought we were superb at that. Absolutely superb. Now, that is taxing physically. I think it's difficult to do that with a small squad for 90 minutes. But at half time, I was delighted, absolutely delighted to be one up, but delighted at just how frankly, I felt like we bullied them. And I loved it because we've been bullied a few times in seasons gone by, particularly when we wanted to play a different style. I like it. I like it being us, making Central Bankers a really, really horrible place to come and play football for away teams. Love that as the season has started. So really hope that continues.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Obviously, we spoke at half time and we're absolutely delighted with the way things were going. I thought, although they were clearly a decent side, as I said, I didn't feel that 1-0 was an unfair score at half time. I thought that we had enough chances to maybe even make it 2. You have the rose tinted spectacles, you see your chances more than their chances. You go, well, we've had that one that their keeper saved, a stupendous save. So I felt happy. But you did remark at half time, when you look at the bench and the amount of effort that we're putting in, that when we make the changes, it's going to be really interesting to see how they do, because we don't have the depth on the bench. Now, half time, they obviously made a change on the stroke of half time. So they were, when I say clearly rattled, I don't mean I don't mean kind of rattled on the ropes, but they knew they had to do something different in order to outfight us, didn't they? I think was it Galloway came on at half time. Came on at half time for Ibrahim, I seem to think. So, but I don't think it changed a huge amount. I thought the second half they still had a bit of control. I think but the game ebbed and flowed. And Michael Scavola in his post-match interview said we had complete control for 75 minutes. I'm not sure we did. I think we had control, not of the. It's how you interpret have control. Because if you say to fans we had complete control of the game, you think that is us on the ball dictating the play, them chasing shadows. That wasn't the case. We didn't have complete control for 75 minutes. But what we did have was when they had the ball, aside from their attacking right, our defensive left, I don't think they knew exactly how to hurt us. I think we had control of where the game was being played, and I think that's a little bit different.
Yeah, I agree with Michael Scabola 100% on that. And I remember Danny Cowley mentioned this many years ago in kind of defending that, and he mentioned that you can dominate and control a game without having the ball, because you allow the opposition to have the ball in areas that they're not going to hurt you, and that comes from things that you're doing. And I think that was 100% the case for the vast majority of the first 75 minutes. So you look at the possession stats again, and you'll see that Plymouth had 1 million passes in their own half. Not as many in the second half, though. They did have quite a few in the last third of the game, of course. But up until that point, their own half passes compared to our half passes was massive in their own half. So yeah, I get it. I completely get it. And again, don't want to be too rose tinted, but I'm a bit of a nerd for the out of possession stuff. I find it interesting. I think it's, like you're only in possession of the ball for about 3 minutes as an individual player, but everything you do for the other 87 minutes of the game plus still influences the game in some way, shape or form, even if it's part of a domino effect. So I find that side of it super interesting. And I thought, to a man, probably until our substitutes came on, I thought we were absolutely superb. In the moments we had the ball, I felt we were direct with it, and we had a plan. We knew exactly what we were trying to do. And when we didn't have the ball, I felt for the majority of that first 68, 75-ish, whatever minutes it was that this was happened, that, Plymouth didn't really lay a glove on us in regards to clear-cut chances and opportunities. There was one moment, again, I think it's that Manamanchi, cut inside from the right wing and hit a brilliant shot just wide of Wickens' right post. I thought it went in.
I thought it was in.
I thought it went straight through the net.
I did as well.
And so it was like, normally you kind of go, ooh, or you hear like the away fans go, ooh. But it was just like silence in our stand. I think that's normally the reaction you get when a goal's gone in. But thankfully it didn't. But yeah, I get that. And until the subs came on, I thought we were absolutely superb out of possession and in possession as well when we did have it. But we scored 2 goals before that point. So shall we talk about those?
I was just going to say that. So before the substitutes come on, we got 2 goals. I mean, the first, the 2 was James Collins. It's a poacher's goal. It's actually a really good header from Rob Street. Keeper's mate had been forced into a save. When it's first come across, I thought Street's going to score this. It's a decent header. And there's Collins reacting quickest. It's a classic poacher's goal. But as a centre forward, what you want to hear people like us saying is you've got to have the anticipation to be in the place to do it. When that ball drops, you've got to react the quickest. There's a defender there. He's in attendance. But James Collins has that naturally, doesn't he? I think Michael on BBC Radio Lincolnshire said that James Collins scored his first goal on Halloween 2009 and he has scored in every single season since. And I checked, he's hit double figures every single season since the 2013-14 season. I think was the last time he's only once not hit double figures since then, which was when he was at Cardiff. So he's up and running, and you can see why, because he's a natural.
Yeah, and dare I say, before we signed James Collins, so in the first half of last season, if that exact chance happens, but it's not James Collins playing up front, it's whoever else was there previously, maybe we don't score that goal. Maybe it just gets cleared off the line. We'll just honourable mention really to Rico Hackett, but just also our out of possession shape again. Now, Plymouth's right back, I think it was Such, right centre back, was in possession. I think he kind of slipped as well, but he looked a bit shaky in possession at times. Obviously, Rico pounced and delivered a good ball. Rob Street did really well to win the header, got above his defender. Good save by the keeper, but like you say, Collins slotted away, which is great for him, really good for him. But it all starts again from a really good press from us. I think they're a particular player in their back line having the ball was a trigger for us to go and really aggressively press, and it worked. It worked a treat. So yeah, a little bit of fortune because the right back slipped in his indecision, but we capitalised, and that's it. I think that's something that we've probably improved on at the start of this season. I'd say is we've become a lot more ruthless. Haven't had that many chances, but the chances we've had, we've taken a good few of them. And yeah, I think James Collins has quite a lot to do with that, to be honest.
Hungarian international, that lad as well, capped last season for the first time by Hungary. So that's kind of the levels that we're up against. You know, we're talking about this game, by the way, and how we've controlled it and all that sort of thing. You got Tom Cleverley was a championship manager last season with Watford and actually didn't do a bad job. Plymouth would have stayed up had they had Muslich all season. You know, we're talking about players that were playing in the second tier of Germany and scoring at the likes of Dusseldorf last season as well. So that, you know, they're a decent
Manchi got, I think, 9 goal involvements last season in 20 plus appearances for Magdeburg, who were chasing automatic promotion to the Bundesliga for a lot of the season. So, you know, that's a big drop in standard in terms of top end of Bundesliga down to League One. You know, he really stood out because of that. So, but yeah, it's a good point. The individual quality that Plymouth had on the pitch was good. They just didn't seem to have a huge amount of cohesion just yet. Maybe a good time to play them with that in mind, I suppose.
I think so. Cleverley came in a little bit later in the summer because there was a bit of a protracted exit for Muslich. So they'll be better. They'll be better. And from what I saw yesterday, I think that they'll be knocking on the door of the top 10 all season long. You know, their fans are really down at the moment. But they were really down just 6 minutes after our second goal. And then he said first goal there. Our second goal when we got our third goal. And it was the strangest of moments because the corner came over. It went out. I'm like, oh. The whistle went, and I thought, oh, thank God for that. He's given a corner. We've got away with one here. And he's pointing to the spot. Now, Carl Brook is the referee. I must point out, I pointed out before we were on air, kind of owes us because he sent Brook Norton Cuffy off for an off-the-ball incident with Lee Brown away at Wimbledon a couple of seasons ago that was rescinded and found as not proven. So he does owe us one. He was also first referee in Lincoln in the FA Cup against Chippenham when you and I were in Germany watching at Dusseldorf at the arena where Amiachi scored last season. So all these things kind of go around and around. Lots of debate, I think, around this penalty. I've watched the replays. there is a clear appeal for handball. You can't see it on the replays, but there's not a lot of arguing from their players. And my mate Matt always says that's how you can tell if it is a penalty. You can normally tell in their protests. Penalty for you?
At the time, had no idea what was going on, like you. Around me, it must have been our angle, because obviously we don't sit too far from each other, so we would have had a similar angle of it. Wasn't a lot of shouts of handball from where I was sitting. I didn't really have a clue what was going on. I was with you, thought it was a corner or a free kick or something, didn't really know. And then I pointed to the spot, like, oh, that's nice. Of course, we were all in a buoyant mood at that point anyway, weren't we? So maybe we weren't watching everything quite as closely, because we were kind of almost still celebrating the goal from a few minutes beforehand. However, watching it back, I think it's a clear penalty, actually, because at the time I thought, well, if it's a handball, why is it not? Because he didn't get booked. Weird didn't get booked for that. I know he got his second yellow later in the game, which we'll touch on, but it wasn't actually that moment that he got booking for. And I thought, well, how the hell can it not be a booking if he's stopped a clear goal scoring opportunity with a handball? And my perception is this, in that he was massively off balance, kind of backpedaling to try and clear the ball. He was kind of falling backwards, but his hand was above his head. Header comes in, it hits his hand, clearly. So I would say it's accidental, but it does stop the ball going in the net. So that has to be given as handball, as per the rules. But probably because it was completely accidental, he'd got away without a booking. At least that's my perception of it. But it was obviously great news for us. Having watched it back a few times, there is also quite a loud shout from the crowd of handball. So maybe people close to the kind of event had a better view than you and I did. And also Lincoln's players were appealing quite strongly right at the moment. And as you said, Plymouth players weren't arguing it at all. So it seemed quite conclusive upon second viewing. But in the moment, it felt like we'd been given a bit of a lucky decision. Maybe that happened in hindsight towards the end of the game rather than in that moment.
Now, I'm not going to talk about Collins scoring it, because 9 times out of 10 you'd expect he's going to score the penalty. He's prolific and he knows how to put the ball in the back of the net. I'm going to talk about Rob Street. Now,
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Is it?
And I liked it as well. Yes,
because
100%.
He picked up the ball as if he was going to take it. So then the focus of the goalkeeper, the focus of the defence, the focus of all of the dark arts that Plymouth were good at, and there was a little bit of the Ian Everts Bolton about them at times, I thought. Perhaps not quite as slick, but there was a little bit of that. And he holds onto the ball, and I'm literally there going, Rob Street's not taking, it's James Collins. And I was getting a little bit agitated. And there was a good 30 seconds or to a minute or so where it was a bit of discussion. And then he put the ball down and walked away. And it takes, not that you need to take the pressure off James Collins, who, as we've said, has been scoring every season for the last 16 seasons or 15 seasons or whatever. But if that's purposeful, and I think I'm going to play into a wider conversation, slightly wider conversation, about Rob Street. It just, how quickly he settled, how he's, last season he felt like he was peripheral. He almost, along with JJ McKinnon, they almost didn't feel like fully fledged members of the squad, and then they went out on loan. Very, very quickly, Rob Street all of a sudden feels like he's massively integral to everything we do.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think he's had a great start to the season. Deserved a goal yesterday. A lot of off the ball work, really aggressive again. He's been brilliant. I think he's been absolutely brilliant this season. Absolutely brilliant. And I think, I wouldn't say think, I'm almost certain that it was 100% intentional yesterday. I think, it isn't that clear and obvious, or it looks so purposeful. So it wouldn't be that clear and obvious unless it was intentional, if that makes sense. It's good. I think it's smart. We always back James Collins to score a penalty, but to just take him out of the limelight, to take any of the attention away from him, it just helps, doesn't it? It gives you a better opportunity, removes, even if it's just 1% less pressure, every little helps, doesn't it? And hey, he slotted it away, 3-0. At that point, it felt like game over. We can have a lovely, relaxing last 15, 20 minutes of the game where we can all have a nice time. But no.
Well, so we made some subs. Now,
we did.
Immediately, Ben House replaced James Collins. I buy that. Collins starts Tuesday. That's why that's happened. We're 3-0 up. James Collins will start against Northampton. He comes off. 7 minutes passes. Not an awful lot happens. We make the double change. Now, on the face of it, again, the double change is sensible. Hamilton for Draper. So Hamilton just going into the 10, potentially behind House. Ring for Hackett, like for like. They were the only natural substitutions that we could make at that time. So why did they affect the shape so much?
Well, I think it was interesting that when House came on, he went on the right and Rob Street went up top. My assumption would be Plymouth really have to come at us now. There'll be space in behind. He's got the legs to kind of stretch them a little bit. So that kind of made sense, but I was surprised by it because I expected House just to kind of go in the 10, Fred to go into the 9, and then Rob just to stay out wide. So maybe there was a little bit of movement in there because I think, and again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there's a lot of similarities between our first 75 minutes yesterday and the Reading game. And I think the point I made is that we were a team that the whole was greater than the sum of the parts. And I think as soon as you take one or two of those cogs out of the wheel, if the players that are coming on at the same level in terms of not on the ball, but the off the ball stuff, I'm not saying about work rate and desire, but I mean about just being like sharp and switched on. Fit, of course, is a big part of that as well. But aggressive, like having the desire to go and win the first, then win the second, and then go again. Like that has to be like because it's that element that won us the game, because it was that element that then allowed us to have the ball in their third under control, and then we're playing in a dangerous part of the pitch. And I just feel maybe, I don't like singling players out. I really don't, but I don't think Ben House did anything wrong when he came on. I don't think Ethan Hamilton did.
Well.
Yeah, I think House did brilliantly. Bearing in mind he played at right wing for a bit, and then he played left wing back for the last sort of 10 minutes. Yeah, really helped actually. I think when we went to a back five, that actually saw the rest of the game out when he went there. Eric Mean looked to struggle when he came on, and I think Rico put a real shift in. Obviously, on the ball was good, but particularly off the ball, really protecting Riley, who was on a booking, of course. Rico did a lot of the first contact defending, to try and he was the first to close down the winger, so the winger had to take him on rather than having a free run at Towler. It was really disciplined performance from Rico, and I think that's a difficult role to go on and fit straight in like for like, and it didn't go brilliantly for Eric when he came on, sadly.
Let's pick up on two things. First of all, it's that one of them's Eric Ring related and the other isn't. So we'll do the one that isn't, first of all. 3 bookings in a minute.
Yeah,
it was inevitable that Ben House was going to get a booking because Ben House gets bookings. Like James Collins scores goals. But actually, did you even notice House's first touch was a foul?
Yeah, it was great.
His first touch was a foul. But that's when we talk about how Ben House was on kind of the leading striker last season. He can now be what he is without that pressure. And he's almost terrier-like. He's absolutely superb in that respect. Now, there was the joint booking, and it's a crucial booking further down the line of Wido and Street wrestling. Now, I wrote in my write-up that Rob Street's shirt must be worth a fortune because it was being torn from his back at every opportunity. Now, we've praised the referee, and Plymouth have lambasted the referee. I'm not sure whether it's lambasted or lambasted. They've criticised the referee. But you could say that to issue that double booking, but to not book 10 other players through the course of the game, he's making his statement a little bit late. But it was a double booking, probably fair. But I just wanted your view on that very quickly.
Yeah, it's a good point, because when I kind of look back retrospectively, of course, we all know that Wireda got sent off towards the end of the game, which of course we're going to be talking about in a moment. I couldn't remember when he got his first booking until I looked back, and then looking back, it was exactly the same time Street did. And I go, oh yeah, of course. And I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you in that there's been a lot of pushing and shoving at corners. I think teams know we're a real threat from them, so they are pretty aggressive at trying to stop us. But we give as good as we take in that regard, really. So, a yellow card both ways probably makes sense. I do feel sorry for Rob, by the way, because it's not just yesterday's. I think every game we've played so far this season, he's been really targeted in terms of his opposition that have been pushing and shoving and trying to undress him at times. And I remember against Reading, we felt like he was really hard done by because he got fouls given against him that should have been for him. But yeah, I think the referee had to make a statement at some point because there was getting a bit more of a need in the game. There were some more rash challenges going in, and maybe just booking a couple of players at a set piece is his attempt to calm it down. But yeah, I think if you give yellow cards for that in that style of game, then maybe should have been 10 or 11 earlier in the game. But it was, I suppose at the time, we don't expect it to be particularly meaningful, but it obviously turned out to be.
Just before we continue, I've just realised I've had the wrong microphone turned on. So if my sound hasn't been all that brilliant,
That's all right.
My apologies. I'm just checking my sound again. My mic will use. How's that? Is that better or worse?
Basically the same.
Brilliant. It just means that if I rub it, it's fine. Now, you also said when we made the change, Street went up top because we were hoping there was more holes in behind. For me, that was almost Eric Ring's first error, I think. My timeline's a little bit muddled, but he broke away. Street would have been 1-on-1, and it was a terrible pass that their defender cut out. And I don't think that's the one that led to the goal.
That was extra, I think.
It was after.
I think so.
So we could quite easily have scored a fourth had Ring been on it. There was a point where he tried to chase back and he looked like he was running in treacle. Whether that's the injury or not, I don't know. But he had a bit of a stinker and he gave the ball away, which resulted, albeit several passes and movement later, but resulted in them getting their goal.
Yeah, and like I said, really feel bad about picking players out publicly like this, but it did stand out because of the performance of everyone else in the team that was so together. And I don't mind him giving the ball away. Like, that happens. He's a League One footballer. It was more what happens after he gave the ball away. And it must be because he's still carrying his knock. He's not quite fit. Like, because I don't think we could ever criticise Eric's work rate or desire ever before. It's hardly a consistent theme. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. However, as soon as he misplaced the pass, he kind of ambled back rather than really aggressively try to counter press and win it back straight away, which is something that every other player on the pitch in a red and white shirt did brilliantly for that kind of 70 odd minutes that they were on the pitch. And it just, because everyone else was so good at that, it really stood out to me, particularly on second viewing, of how, it didn't look like Eric had that same intensity in his desire to stop Plymouth attacking. Like you say, there was 2 or 3 passes from that point and they did all right to kind of carve us open, but every single player has to work in that unit for the unit to be strong. And as soon as one goes out of it, it does potentially break down, particularly when you're against a team that has really, really threatening individuals like Plymouth do. So I was disappointed by that. And then obviously they scored their second goal only a couple of minutes later off a corner. The actual corner itself was short. We were a little bit slow to close it down. I think we were a little bit nervy at the time, but it was, again, sad to say it, in the build-up that led to the corner, probably a similar criticism could be pointed towards Eric. I think it's telling that straight after that, we changed our shape. He was then put up front. And I feel like that was probably because he was carrying an injury. It looked like he was carrying a knock at that point, and it was almost, you keep him out of the way so he hasn't got to be responsible for the pressing out wide. It kind of takes him up the firing line for that. But I think it did have an influence on the outcome of the game. So it's worth us mentioning it.
So I'm conscious of time because we are on 38 minutes and we wanted to finish this little segment on 40. But if he's carrying an injury, is it not more sensible to bring Zain Okoro on? Bearing in mind that at the time we're 3-0 up.
Yes, I think hindsight's a wonderful thing. We have no idea what the medical team know. We have no idea what Eric has said to the team. Hey, he may well have come on feeling fit, and then it might not have been a challenge. It might have just been his first sprint that just he felt something go. He's like, oh, bloody hell. And then he's just not quite there. Like, none of us see it because it wasn't a challenge. We have absolutely no idea. So I really don't want this to come across as criticising Eric's work rate.
Especially not as the Stacey West Patreon.
Yeah, absolutely. But did it? Yeah, exactly. So, but did it stand out that he didn't look quite as on it as the rest of the players that came on? It did, and that did contribute to at least one of Plymouth's goals. And I'm sure he'll learn from that. I'm sure, even if it's just a bit of honesty about injuries and things, we don't even know if it was an injury, but yeah, it was an interesting moment, but it made for a flipping nervy 15-20 minutes.
I say so. It's 3-2. There are actually 17 minutes left at 3-2. 10 minutes plus the 7 minutes injury time. I think 11 versus 11, we draw the game because everything turned. Their supporters, the 700 that stayed, not the 300 that went home, were right on it. All of a sudden, it just took that spark and everything went up. The ball goes into the area. There's a little bit of pinball. I think it's Ethan Hamilton makes the tackle on Waidu. And from where I'm sitting, penalty. All day long. I heard the whistle go and my heart sank. Penalty. And then I see him point the other way. That is probably the correct decision, having watched it back time and time again. The second yellow, which I think effectively ended the game because they were then unable to really press home their advantage. I think the second yellow is harsh. In fact, I think it's really harsh because whilst I think that Ethan Hamilton, if you watch it back in slow-mo, if you'd watched it from another angle, I think he gets the ball before he gets the man, but he does take the man afterwards. So it's not a penalty, but it's not a dive. Really hard done by.
Yeah, I think so. I'm with you again. Funny that, isn't it? You and me agreeing again on the Stacey West podcast. Normal service is resumed. But yeah, gut instinct at the time was, yeah, that's a penalty. And it was coming. They were knocking on the door. What was frustrating, by the way, is the fact that it's not like at 3-0 they were throwing punches at us and they were trying to knock the door down. It looked like they'd given up at 3-0. And then that one goal happened. Then the second, oh my God, the game's changed. And it's like they didn't even earn it. That was the frustrating thing. But then we were on the ropes. And I thought it was a penalty, heard the whistle blow with you. And it was just a sigh of relief that the referee pointed the other way. And then to get sent off, incredibly harsh. Watching it back, I don't think it's a penalty. I'm with you. And that rose-tinted statement's probably going to come back to us again. But I think if that had been given as a penalty, we would probably be lamenting it as incredibly soft. We probably wouldn't be saying it's definitely not a pen. However, one thing is for sure, it's not a dive. I don't think it's a dive. Does he fall to the floor a little bit theatrically? Yes, but he's had contact and
distinct contact.
Yeah, I think it's really hard done. But I feel a little bit sorry for Waidu actually because first game of the season debut, really dodgy clearance leads to Barnes' goal. He then scores an own goal in that game, gets dropped for the next match, comes back in for this one, gives away the penalty for handball, kind of accidental because he's falling backwards, but it's a big talking point that leads to a goal, makes it 3-0, then gets sent off at the end for a dive that probably wasn't actually a dive. The rest of his stats aren't bad, actually, but like the headlines of his first couple of starts for Plymouth are dreadful. Poor guy. I'm sure he'll improve. But yeah, I think we initially felt like we got away with one in terms of getting the penalty for 3-0. Retrospectively, looked like that was the correct decision and quite clearly. But we have got away. I want to say got away with one here, but I think it's definitely harsh on the player to get a second yellow for that moment.
Yeah, I genuinely, I've watched it back, not wanting it to be a penalty, and so I've been looking for reasons to say it's probably not, and I do think that there's contact with the ball. However, I think 80% of the time the referee points to the spot there. Now, whether it is just excellent refereeing from Carl Brook or whether it is this is a tinderbox, I've already got players on yellow cards all over. I've got to make a decision one way or another, home or away. He has to make a decision because of the way the play's gone. I'm not going to say referees ever make a decision based on whether the crowd is home or away, but I would say, again, I just think he's made the easier of the two decisions, but compounded it with the yellow card. So
yeah.
So there's 11 minutes left after that, and there's not a huge amount to talk about in those 11 minutes. And I say, God bless that. What I did notice was there was some clever play. I think it was James Collins liked to run the ball over into the corner quite a bit. We were just compact. You say we went to a 5 at the back with Ben House playing, we'll say left wing back, but it was effectively left back because we got dug in quite deep. But when that final whistle went, oh my Lord, I've never heard a sound like it.
Sigh of relief. Yeah, the biggest sigh of relief in the history of the world, maybe. It was a result that we deserved. And I agree with Michael Cubalo's press conference in that, like, we probably should have won that game 3-0. And it was unnecessary for the last 15 minutes, really, in terms of the tension that was created. However, if you'd offered me a 1-goal victory over Plymouth before the game started, I would have, and you say it might be a nervy one, I'd have obviously snapped your hand off and said thank you very much. Yeah. That's great, because it's a really good start to the season for us. We've won 3 out of our 4 games. The only game we haven't won, of course, we got a red card in the first few minutes. So I've been really encouraged by our start to the season. And we deserve the win. We absolutely deserve the win. May have got on the right side of a couple of decisions, and maybe that'll come back the other way around later in the season, and we'll be on this podcast moaning that referees are stupid and make terrible decisions, and we're all so unlucky and unfortunate. But it's worth mentioning we've got on the right side of one here. But we did deserve to win the game on the balance of the whole 90 minutes.
I think a 1-goal victory was a fair result, and the
stats suggest that as well.
Yeah, 3-0 would have flattered us.
Yeah, 100%.
2-1 would have probably been a fair result, and that was as much based on our first half performance, where I thought we were excellent, but Plymouth are a decent side. We are 45 minutes in to episode 399 of the Stacey West Podcast. You can hear the rustling of notes as Chris turns over to the 12 pages of prep that he's got for Northampton, but I've got good news for you and bad news for him. He ain't going to get through them all because we only have 15 to 20 minutes left, and we also have to talk about a transfer rumour, but we'll do all of that after this short advert from our sponsors.
It's only 1 page on Northampton, actually, just quite a full page. Okay. Yeah.
Right, so let's pick up a few of these comments. So go all the way to the top. If I don't read your comment out, it genuinely isn't persecution. Ian French, good evening. Great performance. Can't wait for Northampton. Same. Joe Horner, evening. Joe, evening. John Booth, evening. Cockwaddle, which is a brilliant name, by the way. I think that's what I was screaming at the television after the West Germany-England semi-final in 1990 as a 12-year-old. Very good evening from Andy S. Next Gen Base. No idea who that is. Evening, boys. Richard Godson. Evening, gentlemen. Mrs. Godson wants me to carve the pork shoulder, so may have to rewatch that later. Sorry if any of you can't hear me through Chris's incessant.
Oh, sorry, everybody. Jesus. Sorry. That was a real little world then.
David Tuplin says, evening, guys. Flotty Top said, good evening from a very cool North Norfolk coast. Emily is listening in rather than being in your face. Harry Jackson is on board. And Emily Flossie said they're at the Muckleborough Tank Museum near Weybourne. Now, the very first time I ever stayed in North Norfolk, we stayed at a campsite that is to the left of the Muckleborough Tank Museum, which I think is just called the Kelling campsite. We pitched up there. And I was with my mates Ross and Graham, and we tried to take a shortcut to the beach, and we actually cut through the training area at the back of the town museum. And these people came out in a Jeep with guns and were telling us off. I think their guns were probably for show, but it was absolutely brilliant. If I'm missing your comments, my apologies, but we're not going to go back over the Plymouth game. Johnny Benton was in Sheringham and Weybourne. Today, Gerard Fox, evening goal, great game. Thought the ref had a good game. Obviously not a Plymouth fan then, Gerard.
Yeah.
A lot of weaker refs would probably have been conned and given that penalty. Fair play to him.
The ref certainly wasn't afraid of making bold decisions. Took very little bullshit.
PLG Spooky says, how's your fingernails? I don't have any left. I bite them anyway. My apologies. Kate is on board. Tiny bit late. We looked good yesterday and was very promising. I don't think their goals were anyone's fault. The defence seems a bit shaky, but what I do, and this is why I have respect for Kate, on a side note, as a regular critic of Freddie, fair play to him for starting the season in a positive manner. And that's all it takes, isn't it? If you have an opinion and that opinion looks to be contrasting with what's happened, there's never any fear in just holding your hands up and go fair play. Absolutely. Just skipping through. So Simon Butler wasn't there yesterday, but watching from afar. Freddie McGrandles, Hamer, Collins Street, all awesome. But Towler seemed everywhere and just wanted to be involved. I think he's going to be good for us. I think he will be when he plays centre half. I think not the strongest of performances at left back.
Yeah, I think if he didn't pick up the early booking, I think he'd have had more involvement in terms of on the ball.
Enjoy your fishing. Evening, lads. I've never been fishing. Have you ever been fishing, Chris?
Once when I was a kid, didn't enjoy it, sadly.
Yeah, my dad always wanted me to be a fisherman, and we used to go to Kingthorpe and try and fish. And I remember pulling the rod out, and there was a fish on it, and I panicked and went like that. And if you won't be listening at home because this is the recorded bit, and then the line got caught up in a tree, and this fish was basically swinging about 8 foot in the air, and none of us could get it, and we just had to watch it die, and then we had to cut the line and leave it. So
my dad was never a fisherman, so I never went with him. I went with a friend once who was really into it, and I just wasn't as interested as he was, so never went again.
No. There's a few things like that, a few pastimes that, and you're a golfer. There's a few things where I know these people absolutely love it, like golf or fishing, and I've never been able to get into any of that sort of stuff. Shame, really. Maybe I'm not a proper boy. Right, shall we? We'll come back, and what we are going to talk about first of all is our little bit of a transfer rumour, and second we will talk about Northampton, and then we will fade to black, and that will be that. So we will come back in just a few seconds. Hello and welcome back to episode 399 of the Stacey West Podcast. I'm Gary. Chris is with me. He stopped rustling his papers now, so if just before the break that was getting on your tits, his apologies from me, because it was quite loud.
Sorry.
To the guy who couldn't get his audio right anyway. My microphone's up here, not even plugged in or turned on. So yeah, it's all good. Right, Chris, we are linked with a loan signing from Everton. He was spotted in the stands yesterday. It's been broken by Pete O'Rourke today, and it's one of those rare Pete O'Rourke stories that only has one team chasing a player. They're the ones that are normally done and dusted. His name is Francis. Chris?
Okoronkwo.
Thank you. I haven't had time to practice it as yet. So I've done a bit of research on him. He looks like he's going to be an addition to the top line. So a Jovan Makama kind of figure. Plays predominantly centrally for Salford last season and for Everton, but can play out wide. Looked to play a little bit deeper against Solihull Moors last week and got 2 assists, both smart passes. Think Rob Street's little header at Harrogate, that kind of taking out defenders, but played with his feet, really clever balls. Was a £1 million striker when he left Sunderland as a teenager for Everton. And the numbers escape me, but something like 25 goal involvements in 59 appearances for Everton Academy over 2 seasons. Certainly a player who would fit the profile of adding depth to the squad, but also if he comes in without us outlaying on a player. So it's low risk for potential reward should it happen.
Yeah, it seems to be. I think it makes kind of sense to give us some offensive reinforcements, particularly, I struggle to see anyone coming in that's going to uproot James Collins as a starting striker. Rob Street has done nothing to deserve to be dropped. Riku Hackett absolutely hasn't either. So as it stands right now, that front three looks pretty nailed on as our starting 11 for the foreseeable. And if you bring in a permanent player, a bit like Street and or McKinnon last year, like long-term aim, but not necessarily a direct spot for them now, it can sometimes feel that their progress is maybe stalled a little bit. So if this feels like a no-risk, kind of low risk, it seems quite versatile as well. So I'll be surprised if he plays up front, but yeah, left, right, maybe in the 10. I'm expecting more as the left or right as a squad player. There's not a lot out there, so I'm going to be honest, you've probably done more on him than I have, but what I did manage to do in the last few minutes before we were recording is I just watched each of his goals that he scored for Salford last year. There's not a lot of clips of his all-round game. He scored 3 goals for Salford in 20-plus appearances. You don't see what happened in the other games, but what quite impressed me about the 3 goals that he did score is they were all quite different, playing all in different parts of the pitch. So showed some interesting attributes, from the very, very, very small amount that I've seen. The best version of him seems like it could be a good addition, but like I said, can't really comment too much on specifics because he's not had a huge amount of exposure to men's football.
No, he has scored in what could be classed as a senior game for Everton. It was for Everton under 21s, but it was wearing the blue of Everton. Who was it against, Chris?
No idea.
Lincoln City.
Oh, was it?
Scored for their under 21s. When we beat them 4-2 in the season that I've already referenced, where Jack Diamond played. In fact, did Diamond score twice in that game? I think we were 1-0 up, and then they came out and scored 2 in a minute, and he scored 1, and I think he laid the other one on for Tom Cannon, who's obviously now at Sheffield United. And then we went on to win 4-2. So he came on and kind of changed the game a little bit at Sincil Bank. So he must be well known to people at Sincil Bank, having come in into that competition. And that is just really briefly where I'll mention that competition. It does just go to show that it does have some value. A lot of these young players do get their own first experience in it. And whilst I know we feel devalued playing against under-21 teams, you and I are here talking about a potential Lincoln signing. I watched him in his clips from a National League Cup game last week. We've seen him at Sincil Bank. So, yeah. Now, are we going to be able to cover Tuesday's game inside 10 minutes?
Yeah.
It's Northampton Town. It's one that, if circumstances were different, I would almost certainly be going to, but obviously will not be. So I will be watching at home. But it is a game that could potentially see us to move on 9 from 12. What are the chances of that, Chris?
Yeah, I think there's a strong chance of that, to be honest. Now, Northampton will absolutely want to be improving on their current showing so far this season, but they only won 2 of their last 10 games last season, yet to win this season, 5 goals conceded, only scored 1 goal. That 1 goal came from a set piece. They're really struggling in forward areas at the moment, and I've done a little bit of digging here to I appreciate a very small sample size of just 3 matches. I haven't paid much attention to the League Cup match because there's so many changes for both teams. But yeah, this kind of plays into our hands a little bit. Not in terms of style. Stylistically, they're more similar to Wimbledon than Reading and Plymouth, albeit not as solid at the back. But and I will go through some stats because at a very nice comment, there's a listener to the podcast called Colin who introduced himself to me half-time in the the Plymouth game. Said some very nice things. Thank you for listening, Colin. Also said he quite likes the stats. So that obviously went down well in my mind.
He's made up. Everyone knows he's made that up.
No, Colin is real. And his wife as well was there and saw him at the end of the game as well. So
that's your mum's partner.
He is called Colin, but no, it's not him.
I know.
Anyway, yeah, so just, we haven't mentioned XG yet. So let's talk about expected goals. In their first game, Northampton 0.85, conceded 2.39, lost 3-1 to Wigan. Second game, 0-0 at Bradford, but Bradford deserved to win the game 1-0, according to the XG, only 0.17 for Northampton. And in their 2-0 defeat to Stevenage yesterday, created 0.89. In terms of shots on target, they had 4 against Wigan in the first game. In their last 2 league games, in Bradford, home to Bradford and away at Stevenage, combined just a single shot on target. So that would indicate to me that goal scoring is a bit of a challenge and chance creation is a bit of a challenge. In the first 3 games of the season, albeit small sample size, Northampton have had the fewest percentage of the shots that they have taken from inside the area. So they seem like kind of pot shots. And they've conceded 5 goals in these 3 games, 3 of which are from set pieces and 1 from direct play, which I think suits us. So it's all right, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all right.
As you know, due to various reasons, I haven't looked all that deeply into Northampton. I have been covering them over the summer. Kevin Nolan has been a little bit critical of their transfer business, saying just before the season kicked off that they were nowhere near ready. Lots of people are tipping them to go down. I think they're the sort of team that if they're going to do well, it's not going to be from starting well. It's going to be from building over the course of the season and getting used to the new players, getting used to the manager's approach. I think that this time next season, they'll be in League 2. That does not bode well for us because when a team is going to struggle for a season, they usually beat Lincoln City home and away, or at least take points. So I can see it being, when I say a banana skin, I think that's kind of credit to where we are generally, because we're talking about Northampton Town here as the sort, put it in inverted commas, the sort of team we should be beating. But they're also a team that I know bigger or smaller than us in reality. I look at the likes of Northampton and their TikTok, like Shrewsbury and Exeter. They don't come from one of the big cities. They're not one of the offshoots of the big cities. They're not like a Stockport or a Rochdale or an Accrington that kind of tagged onto that Manchester thing. They're very much standalone in where they are. And that, in my opinion, puts them like a provincial football club on the same sort of size as us. So the fact that we're here talking about them being relegation candidates, and the fact that we're here talking about we should be in a position to win this game, is a testament to where we are, not being detrimental to them, in my opinion, because clubs of our size and their size, we might have our moment in the sun, like an Oxford, we might like a Plymouth, but though more often than not, these teams will yo-yo up and down through the divisions. I think it's a good time to play them because I think they're the sort of club that will continue to do business through to the end of the transfer window, that will probably be looking at free agents by the time the transfer window comes around. I think budget-wise, we would expect to be in a similar cohort to them, if not above them. And we've just got the wind, got the wind in our sails. We've scored 6 goals in 2 games. And I think even though we are at bare bones, the likelihood is that we could have a new recruit in the side as well. I think there's plenty to look forward to for Tuesday, which means it'll be crap and we'll lose.
Well, you mentioned banana skin. I think barometer, because it was a brilliant performance against Reading. It was a great performance against Plymouth for the majority of the game. And there were like an asterisk next to the Wimbledon game because of the sending off. So we've kind of had a really great start to the season, but particularly against Reading and Plymouth, great performances, good wins, nice to have a strong start at home. However, we were good against the good teams last season. Where we really struggled is against the teams that, quote unquote, we should be beating. Those teams that we expect to be below us. We seemed to recruit and have a style that I think we tried to smother those teams, but we struggled against them. We struggled to break them down. We're a little bit too exuberant to try and win the games and then tend to get caught. And yeah, I think this is the first real test of proper League One football, really, in regards to this is a team that we expect we should be beating. We think 11v11, we probably are better than them, which is not the case against Reading and Peterborough. I keep saying Peterborough, against Reading and Plymouth. This is the game. I really wanted to go to this game, but due to the recording of our other podcast, I can't go. But I'll definitely be watching it. But I really wanted to go to this one. I've been to Northampton in the last 2 seasons, actually, oddly, because I think it's a massive game for me. In my mind, like, are we genuinely good? Because we know we can up our game against the big teams, the teams that want to play, the teams that want to come at us, the teams that think they're better than us and can play the ball on the deck and out football us. We know that suits us against a team that's going to be not backs to the wall as such, but aim to be slightly more agricultural and maybe risk averse in their style. They're going to be a back 3/5, which we haven't come up against yet, against Plymouth and against Reading. So it's a big barometer for me, this. And if we can go to Northampton, I don't think it's going to be a massively pretty game, but I think if we can outwork them, we then do have the talent on the pitch to beat them. I think that then gives me some real confidence, because it shows that we can then kind of beat the teams that we should beat. We can mix it with the big boys, and then you kind of start to think, well, hang on, what if?
I think goal scoring has been their big problem. And I think when you look at their forward line, Sam Hoskins kind of had his day in the sun. You know, he's not an Alfie May that was going to be prolific over a period of time. He did okay for a couple of seasons, but then probably not done anything really since. Tom Eaves, who's a little bit of yesterday's man, potentially. I think he's out injured at the moment. You look a little bit further back, Jack Burrows is a regular starter for them, and he was someone that couldn't really get into our side. They've got Ethan Wheatley on loan from Manchester United, but again, it's, you know, he's very much a roll of the dice. It's not like Francis, you can say his name for me, Okoronkwo. It's the Ronquo, it's the NKW bit that I can't get my tongue around it. But it's not like him where you've got that proven spell. Wheatley had 3 games at Walsall and that was it. So there's kind of an inexperience, and there's a little bit of an old hands. I think they've got Elliot List there as well, and you know it all just feels a little bit Shrewsbury last season.
Oh, you beat me to it. That's what, yeah.
And let's face it, Kevin Nolan has a reputation for going in to places, doing all right at first. You know, he did all right at Leyton Orient and then dropped off. He did all right at Notts County and then dropped off. He kept Northampton up last season. Will he now drop off again? There tends to be that pattern. So it sounds like I'm trying to do the 1 to 24, but you know, at this stage of the season, it's only really that you've got to go on. But when you do talk about them having played 4 games this season, 2 at home, albeit one against Southampton, where they got quite a brave, just a 1-0 defeat. You know, 0-0 with Bradford, 2-0 against Stevenage, lost 1-0 to Southampton, just the one goal against Wigan when the game was already dead and buried at 3-0. It could be a tough evening for them. If we can do what we did against Plymouth, and I don't mean get lots of fortunate decisions, I mean a nice early goal. Sixfields isn't exactly a fortress. I don't think it's particularly intimidating. I quite fancy us. And you know what? Like you say, you then come out of that game and you've got 9 points from your first 4 fixtures. And to be fair, it's not like we've had a massively easy opening few fixtures. I mean, Plymouth and Reading will both be all right. They're work in progress. We've got a tough run kind of away at Bolton, but then Mansfield at home, Wigan at home, Burton away. Could well be going into the Luton game, top of the table clash. What do you reckon?
The thing is, there is a potential that could be the case. As I said, it depends a lot on Tuesday.
Rose-tinted glasses.
Because, it's nice to have hope, isn't it? If you can't have hope 3 games into the season, when the hell can you? But, like I said, barometer for me, because if we can win, that'd be great. If we can get a convincing win against a team that we expect to struggle this season, that does show that we can kind of do both. And that is huge, because that is a difference from last season then. And I think with the lack of transfer activity so far, we've never said on here before, maybe we said it pre-season, in that and this is, of course, at the time we still had some players that have now left the club still in the squad. We mentioned that, we've got the tools to have a really strong start, because lots of teams are going to be finding their feet, haven't quite gelled yet, might have better individuals than us, but we're a better team. That was the theory, and it seems to be the case in this early part of the season, which I'm delighted by. Now, there's no denying, and it's no secret, that we obviously need reinforcements in the squad. We need more depth. We need a little bit of individual quality if we can add it. But in this early part of the season, it does seem to be a real advantage for us to have this kind of team ethic and cohesion that a lot of other teams don't have just yet. And ultimately, if we can get some points on the board early because of that, it just sets us up really, really well, because we expect to have a lull at some point in the season. We know one thing that, we're both massive Michael Scubala fans, but in both winters of his tenure so far, we have struggled to pick up points when the games have been thick and fast, 2 games a week in those winter months. So in my head, I'm kind of thinking, I'm kind of expecting us to not be as consistent at that part of the season when a lot of our game relies on running intensity. And if you're playing lots and lots of games, that, the tank gets emptied quicker, doesn't it? So let's get some points on the board early. Do it now. And then we can afford to have a dodgy run over Christmas. Hopefully not as dodgy as last season, but we can afford to drop some points there. And then we can hopefully have a strong end to the season. And you never know, we could be there or thereabouts if we can beat the teams that we expect to beat. And then we get the points that we got last season against everyone else. We ain't going to be too far away.
Do you know as well, this Tuesday is only one of 2 scheduled Tuesday night league fixtures between now and Christmas. Yeah, and I understand that postponements and potentially international call-ups will change that. And I understand going deeper in the cup stretches your squad and that sort of thing. But as at present, we have no midweek fixtures on a Tuesday night scheduled for October. And we only have 1 league and cup scheduled for September, which is Notts County in the Mickey Mouse Trophy. Oh, sorry, I beg your pardon. Then we've got Man United Kids on the 30th on the last day. Anyway, there we go. So that is episode 399 of the Stacey West Podcast. We spent a bulk of it talking about Lincoln City's 3-2 win against Plymouth, and we could still be talking about it now. Ben has helpfully pointed out that the cup game will be on a Tuesday. I did have that as my caveat that it was league fixtures only. So there we go. So that was episode 399. Really appreciate all of your support. Episode 400 may not be a special. We had hoped to do a special, but then somebody who was meant to arrange that special has unfortunately omitted to do so. So unless we can pull something out of the bag tomorrow, episode 400 will be a plain old podcast featuring Ben plus one other. However, it could still be a special. We shall see. As always, thank you very much for your support, and we will be back in a couple of days' time. In the meantime, up the imps.
Up the imps.
Thank you.